0500 hours. Northern Defense Sector, Wake Island. The pre-dawn sky is a bruised shade of purple, stretching endlessly over the black Pacific water. Humidity hangs thick and heavy in the air, mixing with the sharp scent of wet sand and CLP gun oil. Inside deep entrenchments cut into the dunes, young Marines silently stack crates of ammunition. The ocean laps gently against the shore, a rhythmic, hypnotic sound that masks the feverish digging happening just yards away. A slight breeze rustles the palm fronds, sending shadows dancing across the grim faces of the defenders. A spotter on the forward dune lowers his thermal optics. He freezes. He rubs the lens with a dirty thumb and looks again. The horizon is no longer empty. A massive, jagged wall of steel stretches across the water, blocking out the fading stars. It is an invasion fleet. The radio handset cracks. The spotter screams the coordinates. "Contact front!" bellows a sergeant. The cry tears through the stillness. Marines drop shovels and snatch up assault rifles. They scramble into firing positions, boots kicking up sand. On the water, the shapes solidify. Huge amphibious transport ships loom out of the mist. Their bow doors begin to lower, grinding open like the jaws of steel beasts. Smaller landing craft swarm around them like angry wasps. A red flare shoots up from the lead vessel, searing the darkness. It hangs there, burning a hole in the sky. Then, the flash. A destroyer in the distance unleashes the first salvo. The muzzle flash lights up the ocean for a split second. The air compresses. A high-pitched whistle screams overhead. The ground erupts. Sand sprays 50 feet into the air. A forward bunker collapses under the impact, burying equipment and men in a suffocating pile of earth. The shockwave punches the air out of lungs. Another shell slams into the wire obstacles, shredding razor wire and hurling metal stakes like spears. The platoon commander dives into the command trench, dirt raining down on his helmet. He grabs the radio handset. He orders the mortar teams to hold fire until the landing craft hit the breakers. He screams for the heavy machine gunners to check their sectors of fire. The dust settles momentarily. A crater smokes in the center of the defensive line. A medic drags a wounded Marine out of the collapsed sand, shouting for gauze. Blood stains the white sand red. The horizon flashes again. The second volley is airborne. 0530 hours. Primary trench line, Wake Island. The sun breaches the horizon, casting a blood-red glare through the drifting smoke. The beach is unrecognizable. Craters pockmark the white sand like the surface of the moon. Black plumes of burning cordite rise in twisted columns, choking the air. The rhythmic crash of the waves is lost entirely beneath the continuous, thundering roar of naval artillery. The ground vibrates constantly, shaking dust loose from the sandbag walls. It feels like an earthquake that refuses to end. A whistle shrieks. A heavy shell impacts the dune directly in front of the command post. The explosion tears the earth apart. Sandbags disintegrate. A wall of superheated sand slams into the trench. Marines curl into fetal balls at the bottom of the pit, hands pressed over their ears. Blood trickles from noses and ears, ruptured by the overpressure. A communications wire snaps, whipping through the air like a lash. The bombardment shifts. The explosions walk their way up the beach, churning the sand to clear the path for the landing force. A direct hit obliterates a heavy machine gun nest on the left flank. Metal twists and screams. The gunner is hurled backward, landing in the dirt with a sickening thud. His helmet rolls away. Through the smoke, the roar of engines grows louder. It is a deep, mechanical growl. The first wave of amphibious assault vehicles cuts through the surf. Their tracks churn the water into white foam. They look like floating tanks, boxy and lethal. Water sprays over their bows as they surge toward the sand. The platoon commander spits blood and grit. He crawls to the parapet. He sees the armored prows hitting the shallow water. He grabs the shoulder of the radio operator. He screams to the squad leaders, "Hold fire! Wait for the ramps!" The lead vehicle hits the wet sand. It lurches forward, tracks biting into the earth. It crushes a line of driftwood. The engine revs high. The hydraulic whine of the rear ramp echoes across the water. The steel door begins to drop. Darkness waits inside the troop compartment. The first enemy boots splash into the surf. Below 600 hours. The breakwater, Wake Island. The morning light reveals the kill zone in stark, high-definition terror. The steel ramp of the lead assault vehicle slams into the wet sand. Steam hisses from the hot hydraulics. Inside the dark hull, shadowy figures scream war cries. They surge forward, boots churning the shallow water. They run straight into the open mouth of the beach. "Fire!" screams the squad leader. The dunes erupt. 3 heavy machine guns open up simultaneously. The sound is deafening. A continuous jackhammer rhythm that physically vibrates the chest. Tracers streak through the air like angry red hornets. The first burst tears into the tightly packed cluster of enemy infantry. It shreds them. Bullets punch through ceramic plates and Kevlar. Bodies jerk violently as .50 caliber rounds rip through torsos and limbs. The front row of attackers collapses instantly, falling face first into the salty froth. Blood sprays against the metal ramp, painting it bright crimson. The water around the tracks turns pink, then dark red. The survivors dive. They scramble behind the massive steel wheels of their transport vehicles. They raise assault rifles and fire blindly toward the tree line. Sand kicks up around the Marine positions. A green tracer rounds snaps past the platoon commander's ear. He ignores it. He points to the second vehicle, landing on the right flank. "Shift fire! Right sector!" he bellows. The machine gunner hauls the heavy weapon around. The barrel smokes, glowing a dull cherry red. He walks the fire onto the second ramp, just as the enemy troops deploy. The rounds chew up the sand. Then the men. Water splashes high, mixed with gore. The enemy assault stalls at the water's edge. Men scream for medics, their voices thin and desperate against the roar of the guns. A Marine rifleman pops up from his foxhole. He aims his grenade launcher. Thump! The golden round arcs over the beach. It lands directly inside the open troop compartment of a stalled vehicle. The explosion is contained and brutal. Smoke bellows from the hatch. Metal fragments ping against the hull. No one comes out. 0630 hours. Forward dune line. Wake Island. The rising sun is now completely choked out by a ceiling of black oil smoke. Visibility drops to 50 yards. The beach smells of burnt rubber, sulfur, and copper. The tide begins to recede, leaving a slick of red sludge on the sand. The initial infantry assault lies broken at the water's edge. Piles of motionless shapes tangled in the kelp. But the mechanical roar deepens. It vibrates the teeth of every Marine in the trench. New shapes emerge from the smoke. 8-wheeled armored fighting vehicles surge out of the surf, their tires crushing the bodies of their own fallen infantry. They push past the wreckage of the landing craft. Turrets spin with robotic precision. 30mm autocannons level out. Thud, 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 thud. The dunes explode. High explosive rounds impact the Marine parapets in a rhythmic chain of destruction. Sandbags disintegrate into dust. A defensive fighting position on the right flank vanishes in a cloud of fire and dirt. A Marine is thrown clear, his flak vest shredded, slamming hard against the back wall of the trench. The suppressive fire is overwhelming. Heads duck low. The air snaps with the passing supersonic rounds. "Anti-tank! Up! Up!" the platoon sergeant roars, kicking a gunner awake from a daze. 2 Marines pop up from a concealed spider hole on the ridge. One shoulders a heavy anti-tank guided missile launcher. He peers through the optic. The thermal sight locks onto the heat signature of the lead armored vehicle's engine block. He squeezes the trigger. Whoosh! The missile leaps from the tube. A trail of white smoke marks its path. It covers the distance in a heartbeat. It slams into the side armor of the lead vehicle. The explosion is catastrophic. The shaped charge melts through the steel plating like a hot knife through wax. The ammunition stored inside the vehicle detonates instantly. The 10-ton turret is ripped from the hull and hurled 20 feet into the air, spinning like a fiery coin. It crashes down into the sand with a ground-shaking thud. A jet of flame shoots 50 feet straight up from the open hull, incinerating the crew instantly. The second armored vehicle swerves to avoid the burning wreck. It exposes its rear flank. A second missile streaks from the tree line. It strikes the engine compartment. The vehicle shudders violently and grinds to a halt. Black smoke billows from the vents. The rear hatch kicks open. Crewmen stumble out, coughing and burning, only to be cut down by Marine machine gun fire. The beach is fast becoming a graveyard of twisting metal and fire. OD 700 hours. Outer perimeter. Wake Island. The burning carcasses of the light armored vehicles form a jagged line of fire along the tide line. The black smoke rises straight up in the still air, creating a curtain that obscures the sea. But the sound penetrates the haze. It is a deep, resonant clanking, louder than the surf, louder than the screams of the wounded. The sand jumps on the trench floor, vibrating water bottles off crate. The sheer weight of the approaching machines compresses the earth. The smoke curtain tears open. A massive bow ramp splashes down into 3 feet of water. A heavy battle tank roars down the steel incline. It hits the beach with 60 tons of violence. The ground shudders. Its wide tracks churn the wet sand into concrete-like slabs. A second tank follows, then a third. They form a wedge formation, their long main gun barrels scanning the dunes like the eyes of predators. "Rocket, now!" screams a team leader. A Marine leans over the parapet. He fires an unguided anti-tank rocket. The warhead streaks across the gap. It strikes the glacis plate of the lead tank. Bang! The explosion is bright and sharp. Smoke clears instantly. The tank does not stop. The reactive armor tiles on its hull shattered the warhead before it could penetrate. Scorch marks stain the paint, but the machine is unharmed. The turret snaps toward the firing position. The 125mm main gun fires. The shockwave is physical. It flattens the grass for 50 yards. The shell slams into the dune directly beneath the rocket team. The earth simply vanishes. The explosion throws a geyser of sand, sandbags, and body parts high into the air. The concussion collapses the lungs of Marines in the adjacent foxhole. The lead tank accelerates. It hits the rows of concertina wire. The tracks snap the steel pickets like dry twigs. It rolls over the concrete dragon's teeth obstacles, crumbling them into gray dust under the immense pressure. The engine roars, a black cloud of diesel exhaust spewing from the rear vents. It reaches the first trench line. The driver does not slow down. The tank drives straight over the lip of the ditch. The earthen walls groan and buckle. The trench collapses inward. Marines scramble desperately to clear the tunnel, dragging their weapons. But the ceiling comes down. The tank grinds forward, pressing the trench flat, burying everything and everyone beneath it. The outer defensive line is breached. 07:15 hours. Secondary trench network, Wake Island. The world is reduced to a narrow, twisting corridor of dirt and blood. Dust hangs so thick in the air, it coats the teeth and burns the eyes. Sunlight is blocked by the massive steel hulls of enemy battle tanks rolling directly over the trench lines. The sound is terrifying, a grinding, metal-on-earth shriek that drowns out all orders. Dirt cascades down the trench walls as the 60-ton monsters crush the soil above. "They're inside the wire!" a Marine screams. Enemy infantry floods through the gaps in the crushed perimeter. They jump down into the trenches, bayonets fixed. The battle dissolves into savage, close-quarters chaos. There is no room to aim. A Marine rounds a corner and collides chest to chest with an enemy soldier. The enemy lunges with a combat knife. The Marine catches the wrist. They grapple, slamming against the dirt walls. The Marine drives his knee into the enemy's groin, then smashes his helmet visor with a rock. The enemy soldier slumps. A squad of Marines holds a junction point. One racks the slide of a combat shotgun. An enemy fire team sprints around the bend. The shotgun roars. The blast echoes violently in the confined space. The lead attacker is lifted off his feet and thrown backward into his comrades. The remaining enemy soldiers return fire blindly. Bullets chew up the wooden trench supports. Dirt collapses from the ceiling, burying the dead and the living. Above them, a tank stops. Its engine idles directly over a spider hole. The heat from the exhaust vents pours down into the pit, baking the Marines inside. The tank commander opens his hatch. He sprays a submachine gun down into the trench system. A Marine sniper, positioned in a palm tree 50 yards back, takes the shot. The bullet strikes the commander's neck. He falls limp, hanging halfway out of the hatch, blood dripping onto the hot engine deck. The defensive line is fracturing. A sergeant grabs a wounded private by the vest and drags him toward the rear communication tunnel. "Fall back to the bunker! Move!" he bellows. He pulls the pin on a fragmentation grenade and drops it behind him as they run. The explosion collapses the tunnel section, sealing the enemy pursuit in a tomb of earth. 07:45 hours. The Palm Ridge, Wake Island. The roar of the enemy advance consumes the island. Diesel engines whine as the heavy tanks pivot their hulls, preparing to crush the final bunker line. The remaining Marines huddle in the dirt, their ammunition almost exhausted. The vibration of the ground is constant. But then, a new sound cuts through the din. It is rhythmic, chopping the air with violent force. The tree line to the south thrashes. Leaves strip from the branches. 2 US attack helicopters surge up from behind the ridge, hugging the canopy. They hang in the air like predatory wasps, their noses dipped low. "Lighten 'em up," the pilot's voice crackles over the net. The lead helicopter unleashes a volley of unguided rockets. The pods on the stub wings flash rapidly. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The warheads streak across the gap, trailing white smoke. They slam into the thin top armor of the lead enemy tank. The impact is devastating. The tank disappears in a violent orange fireball. The explosion cracks the hull open like an eggshell. The turret is blown clear off the chassis, tumbling through the air before crashing upside down into a crater. Secondary explosions ripple inside the burning wreck as ammunition cooks off. The second helicopter banks hard to the left. Its chin-mounted 30mm rotary cannon spins up. Bird. The sound is a low, tearing zipper that rips the sky apart. A line of high-explosive shells walks across the ground, churning up the earth. It catches a platoon of enemy infantry advancing in the open. The rounds vaporize them. Bodies disintegrate in a mist of red and gray. The ground is chewed into a pulp. The surviving enemy tanks frantically rotate their turrets. They fire their coaxial machine guns upward. Green tracers stitch the sky, searching for the aircraft. The helicopters dance away, flaring wildly, dropping countermeasures. Burning magnesium flares drift down like fireworks, confusing the enemy targeting systems. The air support has arrived. The momentum shifts. 08:15 hours. Airspace above beach sector, Wake Island. The 2 attack helicopters bank hard, engines whining as they pull out of a strafing run. They circle low over the water, looking for new targets. The air vibrates with the heavy, rhythmic thwack, thwack, thwack of their rotors. On the beach, the enemy armor scatters, their formations broken by the aerial onslaught. But one enemy tank does not retreat. It sits hull down in a crater, hidden by the smoke of its burning wingmen. The tank commander rotates the turret. He elevates the 125mm main gun to its maximum vertical limit. The optical tracker locks onto the heat exhaust of the lead helicopter. Boom! The tank fires. The sabot round exits the barrel at hypersonic speed. It closes the distance in a fraction of a second. It strikes the tail boom of the low-flying helicopter. The impact shears the tail rotor assembly clean off. The metal twists and snaps. The helicopter violently jerks to the right. It loses all stability. It enters a vicious, uncontrollable spin. The fuselage gyrates wildly, nose dipping toward the ocean. The engine screams, straining against the torque. The pilot fights the collective, but physics takes over. The aircraft falls like a stone. It slams into the surf, 50 yards offshore. The impact is colossal. A wall of whitewater shoots 100 feet into the air. The main rotor blades strike the surface while spinning at full speed. They shatter instantly. Jagged shards of composite metal fly in all directions, decapitating palm trees on the shore. The fuel tanks rupture. A massive fireball rolls across the water's surface, turning the turquoise lagoon into a lake of fire. Thick, oily black smoke billows up, joining the dark clouds already choking the island. On the beach, a piece of the rotor blade lands with a heavy thud next to a Marine machine gunner. It is hot to the touch. The surviving helicopter dumps flares and breaks off, retreating to the south. The Marines are alone again. 08:45 hours. The command bunker, Wake Island. The black smoke from the crashed helicopter rolls over the dunes, creating a suffocating artificial night. Ash falls like gray snow, coating the sweaty faces of the survivors. The defensive line is shattered. Corpses lie tangled in the razor wire. The surviving Marines are huddled in the ruins of the main bunker, nursing wounds wrapped in dirty rags. The barrel of the last functioning machine gun is warped from heat. The silence that follows the crash is heavy, broken only by the crackle of burning jet fuel. Then the vibration returns. It is different this time. It is not the metallic clank of tracks, but a deep, vibrating hum that resonates in the chest cavity. The loose sand on the floor begins to dance. "Front!" a sentry croaks, his voice raspy from smoke inhalation. 3 massive, heavy hovercrafts burst through the wall of smoke. They are colossal, looming over the water like floating skyscrapers. Giant turbines on their decks scream with the power of jet engines. They do not slow down for the water obstacles. They ride on a cushion of air, gliding effortlessly over the submerged mines in Dragon's Teeth. The lead hovercraft surges onto the dry sand. The downdraft from its skirting blasts a sandstorm into the Marine positions. It blinds the defenders. The vessel drifts sideways, crushing a stand of palm trees before settling onto the beach. The engines idle down to a deafening whine. The massive bow gate unlatches. It falls forward with a ground-shaking clang. "Last mags! Make 'em count!" the platoon commander yells. He racks the slide of his pistol. Inside the hovercraft, a fresh battalion of enemy infantry waits. They charge down the ramp in perfect formation, fresh and untouched by the morning's violence. They step over the bodies of the first wave. The Marines open fire. The machine gun stutters, firing a short burst before jamming. Riflemen pick their targets, dropping the lead runners. But the volume of return fire is overwhelming. Enemy bullets chip away the concrete of the bunker. A Marine throws his empty rifle as a club and draws a combat knife. The enemy wave crashes against the final fortification. The distance closes to 0. 09:15 hours. High altitude, Central Pacific. The sky is a piercing, indifferent blue, far above the smoke and death. 4 strategic bombers cut through the thin air at 30,000 feet, leaving white contrails that stretch to the horizon. Their fuselage bay doors groan open. Hydraulic arms release the latches. Dozens of 2,000-pound guided munitions drop from the racks. They tumble for a second, then stabilize. Fins snap open. They dive nose first toward the gravity well, screaming silently as they reach terminal velocity. On the beach, a shadow sweeps over the charging enemy infantry. A soldier looks up. He stops. The earth opens. The entire waterline detonates simultaneously. It is not a series of explosions. It is a geological event. A wall of fire, water, and pulverized coral shoots 500 feet into the air. The sound arrives a fraction of a second later, A crack so loud it ruptures eardrums instantly. The lead hovercraft takes a direct hit. The massive vessel disintegrates. The aluminum hull is shredded into millions of razor-sharp fragments. The aviation fuel inside ignites, creating a secondary fireball that consumes the oxygen for hundreds of yards. The shock wave is visible. It ripples through the air like a distortion in reality. It slams into the exposed enemy infantry. The pressure wave crushes chests and liquefies organs. Bodies are hurled backward like rag dolls, tumbling end over end into the boiling surf. Inside the command bunker, the Marines are lifted off the floor. The concrete walls crack. Dust falls in thick, suffocating sheets. The platoon commander is thrown against a crate, gasping for air that has been sucked out of the room. The bombing run ends. The roar fades, replaced by the crackling of infernos on the water. The smoke clears slowly. The invasion fleet is shattered. Twisted metal skeletons of the landing craft burn in the shallows. The water is black with oil and debris. The surviving enemy boats turn sharply, engines screaming as they retreat back to the armada. The platoon commander stumbles out of the bunker. He wipes blood from his eyes. He looks at the sea of fire. The beach is held.